notes for R80.40. In the R80.40, there is a section about those domain migration tools. I think they were long awaited by customers and checkpoint engineers as well. Those tools we're gonna make the life a bit easier during operations. So this is what we're gonna talk about today. So let's go to the agenda. Yes, those are the new domain migration tools, as I mentioned, and we'll have an overview of those tools first, and then we're going to go and run the scenarios under which those tools can be used. So the scenarios are those one listed here. They are backup and restore an individual domain management server on a MDS. It's a good feature. Migrate security management server to become a domain management server on an MDS. The other scenario is to migrate a domain management server to become a security management server. And the last scenario is to take a domain management server from one MDS and migrate it to another. So those are the four scenarios that we're going to talk about, and I will do a demo as well as present the procedural steps for each scenario. So we'll talk about a little bit about the purpose of the domain migration tools. So why do we need those tools? Well, if you have a long history with Checkpoint and you run R77 on your management platforms, and you have MDS as well in your environment, not only security management server, you know that in R77 we were able to perform some of those functions with no issues. Once we went to R80 management, we have to use other ways of other methods to migrate, for example, security server to an MDS. I remember a scenario when I have to do such a particular task to help a customer migrate a Smart Center server or security management server to an MDS, and we have to use some professional services tools that would export and import the policies, the objects, and they weren't very easy and very user friendly, and also required a lot of manual work. So those tools that we have now available in R80.40, they were going to close the management feature gap between R77 and R80. As I mentioned, the domain migration was supported in 77. So what we want to use those tools for? We want to use them to, well, which is kind of new in R80, to back up and restore an individual domain on an MDS. We're going to see that how it works, and again, we going over the scenarios that I discussed at the beginning. We should be able to migrate a domain management server from one MDS to another. Again, currently is just on the same version. Migrate a security management server to a domain management server in an MDS, and the other scenario is to migrate a domain management server from the MDS and make it a security management server. And this is the rationale behind these features. I'll talk about the ways of implementing those tools. So we do have a new set of API commands. They are available in API versions 1.3, 1.5, and 1.6. If you're familiar with the API version for management, you know that those versions correspond to R80.20, R80.30, and R80.40. So that's good news, because we can use those commands in R80.20, starting with Jumbo hotfix accumulator take 117, and in R80.40, starting with a Jumbo hotfix accumulator take 135. So yeah, we do have those commands again available in R80.20. They were ported back basically from R80.40. They were ported back to R80.20 and R80.30 in some relatively recent Jumbo HFAs. So those API commands that we're going to use are the backup domain, restore domain, migrate export domain, and migrate import domain. So you can look up on the API user guide, and you will see the description of those commands with examples if you want to dig a bit deeper in those commands. So quick description. So the backup domain, we're going to help us back up the domain database. And it is available on an MDS. And we run it from the context of the MDS. So you do not do an MDS env CMA, you're going to do it from the context of the MDS. The same with the restore domain and also the migrate export domain. Of course, we're going to run the API from the MDS, but we're going to see that the command is specific to system domain. So migrate export domain and migrate import domain, you're going to see that the API is explicitly referring to system domain. And talking a little bit about the documentation. So we do have two documents which describe those features. The one is SK 156072, which describes the domain migration in R80.x. It's a good guide, it's a good reference, and you can also see the scenarios in installation the upgrade guide for R80.40. So those two are good documents to look at when you will try to implement a domain migration. Okay, so let's go and dive into each of the scenarios. So the first one is to back up and restore an individual domain management server on a multi-domain server. So that is it. You just back up an individual domain management server. I think this will gonna become handy in R80.30. And sorry, R80.40, and of course R80.20 with the Jumbo and R80.30 with the Jumbo. And it can complement the database revision control. This is a way of saving a complete database for a CMA. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that this feature has some limitations. So one of the limitations is that we can only back up and restore the domain management server that is primary and active. So when we run this procedure, we run it on the MDS server where the CMA or the domain management server is primary. So we run this backup, and then if you have an environment with a secondary MDS and an MLM, so you have a secondary domain management server and a domain log server, we will gonna have to recreate those secondary CMA and the CLM from the backup. So those extra steps require you to have right off the bat the information about the information like IP, the server name, and you would like to have this information before you start the backup process, because at one point in time, part of the restore is that you wipe up the domain. So you would like to have the information before you do that. So we can use those API commands to gather those data. Very easy commands. They can be used even in scripts. So one of them is to get the MDS domains. So with this command, we're going to be able to get the domain names, and also we can get the server's information. So you're going to get the IP address, the name of the servers for each domain. So if you would like to back up and restore a domain, perhaps you want to get this information ahead of time. So again, those are the commands that we can use. And I'm going to give you an example. So if I have this MDS with two domains, alpha and omega, we see the alpha server and omega server as being the domain management servers with their IPs. So if I do an MDS stat, of course, we're going to see the information. And if I run those commands, as I mentioned, I get the alpha and omega as the domain names, and then I can show the servers. And again, it's good to have this as a best practice, to have it before you you proceed with the deletion of the domain, because you will need this information again if you have an HA environment, or if you have an MLM, or you will need to restore that there as well. So I'm going to go over the procedural steps. It's an easy command to back up. So you can just run this command. You're going to be prompted to enter the username and password as of the administrator in the MDS, and you specify the domain and the name of the file. I would like to caution you to use the .tgz, the suffix of the file. So it's a TGZ file, but you have to specify it in the name. That's an important step, because the script is not going to add the TGZ. You have to give the full name, including the .tgz suffix. After we take the backup, we can restore it. So since we're going to delete the domain, we want to make sure that the file that we captured is valid. So there's a command to validate the restore before we actually do it. So there is a parameter of the restore domain called verify only, and the first step that you're going to do when you try to restore a backup is to run it with verify only true. So once we do that and we get the green light that is successful, then only then we can go ahead and delete the domain that we want to restore. So simple command, API command, delete domain name, and we give the name of the domain. And then we can go ahead and restore the domain. So we don't need to have like an empty domain. We can run this command, and the command will going to create the domain for us. So fairly easy command. I will look at the example here. So we provide the file path and for that domain, and we have to specify the option verify only false. So what it means is that we're not going to do just verify. We're going to actually do the restore. After we restore, after that process is complete, we can go and add the GUI clients and administrators to the domain, and we can use Smart Console. And then you can connect to the domain management server via Smart Console. So if we have HA, right, we can restore the standby domain server and the domain log servers for that domain. We can do it either through Smart Console, and again, this is where that information that we collected with those API commands, can be handy if you don't have documentation of the names and IPs, and this is where we use that information to create the standby domain servers and MLMs. Again, if we want to, sorry, CLM, if we want to add a domain log server, the commands are very similar, but we have to put an extra parameter servers at type log server. So again, this is if we want to use API commands. And after that, we can install database and we can install the security policy to start receiving logs again from the firewall. And I have a demo. So let's have a look. I have a video. I'm gonna play it. So I don't have a video. I'm gonna be looking at the video and I will comment on the action. So I'm connected to an MDS right now. Okay, so those are the three domains. Sorry, the three domains, of course, including the global domain. So alpha and omega. I do have a global policy assigned to both of them. So the backup and restore works with global policy as well. A good idea is to reassign the global policy before we take a backup, just to make sure everything is fine with the global policy. And what we're going to do, we're going to restore the omega. So we are on the MDS. Yes, we do see the information. Again, we will try to collect the data. So again, alpha and omega, right? They are the domains, alpha server and omega server. They are the domain management servers. We're going to skip a little bit further. So what I want to do is to collect that information about the domains. So I'm listing here with this command omega and alpha being the domains. So I'm going to just copy and paste in the next command when I'm going to show the servers. So fairly good information to capture in text file. So when I'm going to restore it, I'm going to, if I do have a secondary CMA or a CLM, I'm going to be using them. Okay, so this is when I'm doing the backup, right? So I'm running the command, I'm authenticating, and I started it, and you can see that here on the taskbar, you do see the backup domain omega, and you can see the details also on the CLI. We can see the progress of the command. Okay, I'm gonna skip forward. So this is when it's finished, right? So you do see that, and also on the CLI, you're gonna see that the backup is successful. Okay, so we got the backup. I'm checking the file just to have an idea about the file size. So it was like a very, very small domain with a very small policy. So here, I would like to validate the file. So I'm using the restore domain with the flag to only do the verify. So I'm running it. Of course, you do see also on the task on the MDS, validate the restore was successful. Good, so I can proceed to delete that domain. I can run it here. So through a CLI, so I'm running delete domain. The first time I had a small typo on the command, and that's why you do see those those messages on the CLI. But I created it, I entered the command, and you do see here also on the task that delete is taking place. Okay, okay, I think I went a bit too far. So here, after I deleted it, you notice that the omega domain is gone in Smart Console. Also, if you do an MDS stat, it's gone. So the delete of the domain has been successful. Now, what I want to do, I want to restore it. So here, I'm gonna change the flag of from verify only true to verify only false. And I will be running that command. And as you can see also on the taskbar, you can see restoring domain omega is taking place. You can see details, and we can monitor the progress. I'm gonna skip forward while the restore is taking place. Okay, is done, has been successful. We can see the omega domain shows back. An MDS stat also shows it. The processes for the FWM is up. The process for FWM is up. All the processes of this domain management servers are up. I'm connecting to it, and I'm adding the any host clients. You can configure the way you want. So this is a mandatory step because otherwise we're not going to be able to connect to those domains. So I'm publishing the change. If you have administrators that you want to domain administrators for this this domain, you can go ahead and you're going to have to add them back. So I believe that's pretty much it. I'm just able to reassign global policy if I want to at the end, and I can connect to the domain as well. Okay, so I will go to the next slide to talk about the limitations. So the backup and restore is currently supported via management API only. It can be taken and restored on the same MDS, and we take it on the MDS where the domain is active and primary. We have to edit the GUI clients to give access to the restored domain server. In high availability configuration, only the active domain management server can be backed up, and then we have to restore all the servers, as we mentioned. If we have a global policy, we have to make sure that you didn't purge since you've taken the backup, you didn't purge that revision from the global policy that was taken. So that's important. And also, if the domain is containing objects related to VSX, the backup of the domain is blocked. And there's an SKA which describes this limitation. Okay, let's continue our presentation with the second scenario. That is, we're going to migrate a security management server to become a domain management server. I think this scenario is, it's a common one. Customers may have a small environment with a dedicated security management server, and they can also have an MDS. So if they want to consolidate everything into an MDS, this is a procedure that they can use. So when we're going to do this, we have to have a number of preparatory steps. Of course, make sure that this partition on the target machine has enough space to allow the export file to be uncompressed and install. So rule of thumb is to have at least 5 times the size of the exported file. And perhaps this is the most likely scenario, if the target server is going to have a different IP address than the source server, you have to ensure that the firewalls are going to have a rule that will allow access from the new management IP. So you have to accommodate the rule base with that. And I would say normal things. If you do changes, make sure you publish them. Don't leave them unpublished. Make sure all the processes are up, and also do a log switch for the firewall logs and audit logs if you are planning to migrate the logs as well. And if we do not do that, the backup will not going to contain the logs, the firewall logs and the audit logs. So it's a good idea to run that just before the export. So another thing that is good to run is the API status. You know, make sure that API is running before we are attempting to run API commands. The syntax of the command is the one that is presented on the screen. So for example, if I want to export security management server, right? It's only one, right? One domain on that management environment. So what we have to put is just the file path. Again, use the .tgc, and again we do have a parameter that tells us if we want to include the logs or not. So include logs true means that we're going to export with the logs. We have to transfer the file to the target MDS server, where we would like to create a domain from this database export. And then we're going to have to import. So, of course, we run the API status and make sure that the file is right. You know, checking the MD5 sum is a good practice to do. And I would like to tell you about the syntax. So in R80.40, this is the syntax. Again, using the migrate import domain API command, then followed by the domain name, followed by the name of the management, the domain management server. That's the CMA name, and then the IP address, and then the file location, and if we want to, you know, import with the logs or not. For R80.20 and R80.30 jumbos, there is there's an extra parameter exported from MDS. We have to set it to false. So the command, we're going to create a new domain and a new domain management server, and we're going to import the source database. So unlike in the R77, you don't need to create a domain prior to import. So the command, we're going to take care of that. And again, best, you know, makes sense. The domain name does not conflict with existing domains, so it's not, you know, it's different. And after that, after we run this, we have to add the GUI clients, you know, similarly to the way we did in the first scenario, and administrators, test connection to Smart Console. If you have the same IP, make sure you disconnect the source server from the network. You could do that beforehand. Install the security policy on the gateways and clusters, and if you have, would be a good idea actually before you do that to create the standby domain servers and the domain log servers if they are required. So I have a demo. I will play. So this is a security management server. I'm connecting to it with Smart Console. Again, it's running R80.40. So all my scenarios are done for R80.40. Okay, so I'm also connecting with an SSH session into it. Again, I'm just confirming I'm running R80.40. I'm looking at the database, sorry, at the policy, right? It's called FWMA policy. Yeah, I just have 3 rules, again, just for testing. So again, this is a policy I have on this security management server, and basically I want to export this and create a new domain on an MDS. And I'm going to use the same MDS that I used before. I'm checking, yeah, I'm checking the API status. Okay, making sure that's running good. I check the processes as well before doing the export. Okay, so I'm running the export command, migrate export domain. I'm giving it a name with a host name. Okay, and I don't want to include logs in the scenarios. I'm trying to make my export as small as possible for this demo. Again, we can see that API is running, right? We're looking at sessions. Okay, so it's doing the migrate export. I'm gonna skip a little bit forward. Okay, it's done successfully. So the file is there. I'm checking the size of the file, 46 megs. So this is basically the first part, and I'm also transferring to the target MDS. Okay, and let's go to the import phase of the security management database. Okay, so I'm going to the MDS. Okay, let me go a little bit back. Yeah, so it's the same MDS with alpha and omega domains, so 2 domains. I'm going to import this into a 3rd domain. I'm going to call it Bravo. Yeah, those are the 2 domain management servers. Checking the version, checking the file that I transferred, and this is when I will start to do the import. So I'm running the CLI command. Again, you notice the domain name that I'm creating is called Bravo. The name of the domain management server is going to be Bravo_server. I'm giving it an IP address, the .63, because the other IPs are .61 and .62. I'm trying to be consistent, and I'm running the command. I'm authenticating, and it started. As soon as it starts, also you do see on the MDS on the task that the importing domain Bravo is in progress. Okay, it's running. I'm gonna skip forward up to the place is okay. Here I'll just go a little bit back. Okay, the import of the domain Bravo succeeded, as you can see on the task. Also, the command gave me the API command ended, and we do see the output that the import of the domain Bravo succeeded, is 100% done. I'm able to see the domain in Smart Console with the correct IP address for the domain management server. So remember that the first thing, I cannot go and connect to the domain. If I do, what do you think will going to happen is I'm not going to be able to to connect because I didn't assign the GUI clients. So I have to indicate that I wanted to give it access from any host, right? So I'm doing that, and after that, I will going to be able to connect again. I don't have a global policy, right? So only alpha and omega have a global policy. If I want to, I can add it later on. So again, I will try to connect to the CMA just to check the, if the policy that I had on the security management server, sorry, that I clicked on the slide. Yeah, so I opened it, look at the Bravo, right? So we are connected to that domain, to the domain management server. Yeah, and that's the policy that I have on the Smart Center server, so on the security management server. So the import has been successful. Okay, so let's move to the next slide about known limitation. We have, yeah, it's about the same version. They have to be the same. Currently, the hit count data is not migrated. Again, if you have high availability configuration, only the active domain management server is exported and can be migrated. It takes a bit of time, so depending on the size of the domain, so you have to give it time. Again, don't forget to edit the GUI clients and admins after the restore. You can go on Smart Console and edit the domain and add GUI clients as I did in my demo. And exporting an endpoint management server is not supported. And if you have objects related to VSX is blocked, and there is an escape for the instructions. Let's go to the next scenario, which is migrating a domain management server to become a security management server. So that is if you have an MDS and you want to take a domain out and want it to make a security management server out of it. Pretty much the same preparatory steps as we did on the previous scenario, including preparing the rule base if you change the IP address so that you can, the firewalls will allow communication from your management server. And same thing, of course, processes need to be up, and the firewall log switch, you have to do it before you export. And a good idea to make sure API status is running. And the reason I put it, I'm entering is because when you run an API status command, you're going to be able to see the status of a number of processes, including CPM. So the CPM may be started sometimes, but still you do have a process ID, but still may be initializing. And if you run API status, you're going to be able to see exactly what's happening with that process. So we're going to see it in the demo. The commands that we need to run are the migrate export domain API command, again with the system data domain. So we run it against this domain. We provide the name of the domain and the file, and if we want to include logs, and we transfer it to the MDS. From the MDS to the target security management server, and again to import, we're not going to use API commands to import on the security management server. We're going to be using migrate import domain script, a utility. It is located under $sign MDS FWDIR. So by the way, MDS underscore FWDIR is an environment variable that is, has the same value with FWDIR. So I know it is a bit confusing to see on a security management server to see an environment variable MDS underscore FWDIR, right? Since it's a security management server, not an MDS. But the command, I use it like this just for to ensure that my document is consistent with the documentation. You can run the same command as $sign FWDIR. Basically, it's exactly the same. The $sign FWDIR and $sign MDS underscore FWDIR, they have exactly the same value. And the parameters that we are using is SN, which is the name of the new security management server. So the name of target security management server, destination security management IP. So we're going to specify the new IP address and the TGZ file that we will be using to import the database. So, and again, skip logs, it's optional. specifies if we want to import the log files or not. And after that, after we are successfully importing, again, we have to give it time for the process to come up. We have to use cpconfig to add the GUI clients and eventually configure administrators. Good idea if we have the same IP on the domain management server to stop it, and then test connection. If we don't need it, of course, we're going to delete the source R80.40 domain because we already migrated it. So we don't want to have any conflicts. And if you have an access control rule where you have the old IP, you may be able to edit it now and delete the old IP of the CMA. Of course, install the security policy, and if you have standby domain servers and outside log servers, because it's a security management server, you can do that. And I have a demo. Let's go on it. Okay. Let me go to the next slide. So this is my MDS. We're going to take the Bravo domain and we're going to export. Bravo doesn't have a global policy. Again, I just show there I have an administrator, but they're not going to be transferred over. Again, this is the target security management server. Okay, so I'm checking the API on the MDS before exporting. And right here, I'm running the migrate export command. I'm going to stop a bit on the syntax. So the domain I'm exporting is Bravo. I'm providing the file path, and I indicate that include logs is false. I don't want to include logs. And I'm authenticating, and I started it as well. You're going to see here on the MDS on the taskbar that I do have the task for exporting domain, and indicates me that I'm exporting domain Bravo. Okay, and this is going to take some time. And here is successful. So I succeeded in you can see here on the taskbar, export domain Bravo succeeded. Also on the CLI, I do have the file. I'm going to transfer over to I'm going to copy it over to the security management server. I'm checking the MD5. It's the same again. I just wanted to show you here that MDS underscore FWDIR and FWDIR, they are the same. Yeah, so not to be alarmed when you're going to see MDS FWDIR on on a security server. And here is I'm going to start to import the domain. And this is the command that I'm going to take, and let's see how it runs. So as you can see here, the import on the security management server is running. Okay, you're going to see when it started. You're going to see the progress. Again, I'm importing it into a freshly installed security management server that I just can, after I install it and I configure it as a primary security management server, I just go ahead and connect with Smart Console to make sure everything works. So the processes are coming up, making sure that I have a license, a valid license. And then, yes, I can transfer that export file into this management server, and I can run the import with the migrate import domain.sh script. Okay, so I'm doing that, and I'm just checking a few things. Okay, and I wanted to see when it's done. Here I'm checking some log files, still ongoing because it's taking a lot of time. And here I'm approaching the end. So the migrate domain was 100% done. So the import finished successfully, stopping the security management server. And okay, and tells me that, one second. Okay, I'll pause it here. So it's done, and here's a nice reminder, hey, please use cpconfig to add the administrator and the GUI client. The most important part is to add the GUI client. You know, I'm gonna use any, so I can connect to this security management server from any IP. And this is when I'm running it. Here, when I'm trying to add cpconfig, to run cpconfig and to add the GUI clients, here, the first time I did it, it failed to connect because CPM process was not fully up. Okay, I ran it again, cpconfig, and I was able to do it. So here I had some, again, I tried to connect, but here I'm running it again, cpconfig, and I'm entering. Okay, still failed. Yeah, it's on the it's on the next slide. When I was successfully, because I hear again, CPM process was not up. I had to wait a little bit, a bit longer, and I just wanted to show you this right here, right? So I'm configuring an administrator. I'm adding it, and here I'm adding. I'm configuring the GUI clients. I'm adding any, and then after I did that, it's stop and start the checkpoint processes, and then, sorry, wrong click. I'm connecting to the server, is initializing. Okay, and I'm checking the policy is the one that I have on the domain Bravo. And yeah, here it is. So I'm on the .70, which is my, you can notice this is the security management server and the policy is there. Okay, since we don't have a lot of time, I'm gonna go to the next one. Again, similar limitations as before. I want to go on the domain migration between R80.40 multi-domain servers. Again, similar preparatory steps as in the previous scenario. We are going to use the migrate export domain API command, right? So similar to the one that we used in the previous scenario, of course, we have to copy the database from the source MDS to the target MDS. So this is an example when I'm trying to import the management database into the target MDS, again, making sure the API status is fine. This is an example. So what I exported from the MDS1 into the target MDS, which is MDS2, I will define the new domain on the target MDS. I call it Charlie. The domain server name is here in this example is Charlie server, and I'm providing the IP address on the new and also the export file. And again, if I want to include the logs or not. And I will gonna run the demo. So I'm gonna connect to the, this is the source MDS. This is a domain Bravo, the one that I want to export. And I'm connecting to that particular CMA. Bravo doesn't have a global policy assigned. and this is basically, a limitation. Makes sense. If I don't have the same global policy on the target, I don't want to do that. So anyway, I'm looking at the security policy. So I have a security policy with 3, and you notice the large service applications on the second rule, right? It's a large list, and this is the policy of the domain, right? FWMA policy. This is what I want to export. I want to export this database with this policy. Okay, and again, it's located on the MDS1 on domain Bravo. So this is one I want to export into the new one. This is the new MDS server. Notice it has a different IP, is .65, has no domain yet, but we're going to import one. We're going to import the Bravo. We're going to call it Charlie. And, oops, sorry. Let me go back to the video. I apologize, I clicked on the wrong place on the slide. So coming back, this is a target MDS. We'll connect with the SSH session into the source MDS. Again, notice the 3 domains. Checking the API status because we're going to go ahead and we're going to export the domain Bravo. Everything is fine here. So I'm going to go ahead and run the command, which I'm going to export the domain Bravo with a file name and include logs false. Okay, so I am prompted for username and password, the administrator to the MDS. Okay, and I'm running it. And you can see here again on the taskbar that export domain Bravo is running. I can look at the details. Okay, very quickly, it's done. I'm going to transfer it over to the target, which is MDS02B. Checking the file. Again, checking the MD5. It's the same. And here, I'm going to import it, right? I checked API status, and I'm going to start the import. So I'm importing that file. Again, I'm going to pause here for a second. So when I'm importing, I'm specifying the name of the domain I'm trying to create, and I call it Charlie. But the domain server name, I still have it Bravo server, right? So the domain we're going to create is going to be Charlie, but the CMA name is going to be Bravo server. Again, I provide the IP address and the file path, and indicate that I don't want to include the logs, and it's ongoing. So I'm gonna continue. Again, you see the taskbar here. So it's running, the import is running, it has been successful. Notice the target has a new domain called Charlie, and I'm gonna assign any host as a trusted client for that particular domain, Charlie, right? And I may eventually add an administrator, like here. I'm adding the Kevin administrator because there was no domain administrator. So it's something that you may need to do. So again, I'm checking the here. I'm connected to the Charlie domain, to the CMA, and I'm looking at the policy as the one that I exported from the source MDS. Okay, and I can launch application. Okay, we only have 3 minutes. I just want to go over the limitation. So the migrating a domain is possible only when the source and destination have the same version. We cannot migrate a domain that has assigned a global policy. We have to remember to edit the GUI clients and admins after we imported the domain server. We can do only one domain at a time. I don't think that is a serious problem. Heat count data is not migrated. And again, if we run in a high availability configuration, only the active domain management server is exported. But again, you have to be patient when you do the import. I had a small database, so was quick enough. So we're reaching the end of the presentation. A few mentioning about troubleshooting. So CPM and FWM are the relevant processes. The CPM.elg and the MDS.elg basically are the files that can provide us information in case something fails. And I would like to wrap up this presentation with a summary. So we described all use case scenarios for the domain migration tools, backing up or restoring individual domain, migrating database from the security management server to the domain management server, and the one from the domain management server to a security management server, and migrate a domain management server between two different multi-domain servers. So I think that is my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have questions, please feel free to forward them to the link below. Yeah, I'm back to Paxton.
Octavian, that was awesome. Very fascinating. And I think we had a very captivating audience. So thank you all for sticking around and hanging out with us. As Octavian mentioned, if we did not answer a question or if something comes up, please reach out to the ATAM at checkpoint.com alias on the screen. Everyone have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.